All right, Mr. Chair, we do have the recording going, I believe. I know Commissioner Ballard's in the house. I saw him, but if you want to go ahead, it is 3:30, so.
Yeah, we'll go.
Oh.
Yeah, he's. Yeah. Bit of a circular problem. Yeah, we'll get going. So we'll convene the, what is today's date? The Monday, February 5th, meeting of the Transportation Commission. We'll start with a roll call attendance. Mr. Ballard, I know, is currently looking for his glasses. Mr. Shoemaker. Here. Commissioner Lancaster appears out. Mr. Steed is out. Mr. Hopkins online.
No, Mr. Chair, he's not. I expect him, but I do not see him.
Okay. Mr. Lewis.
Here.
I am here. Mr. Leclerc.
Here.
Mr. Song.
Here.
John Wasson.
Here.
Leila Klopfenstein.
Present.
David Reinhardt. Alyssa Taysom. Justin Price.
Mark Wastall for Justin Price.
Sergeant Smith.
Here.
Is there anyone online that we missed? No. All right, moving on to the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question. Do we need to add an item under old business for Sergeant Smith's report? It's like we've missed that the past couple of meetings.
I believe that might have been under ex officio updates.
Okay.
Or, I mean, we can add an item if it, Caleb, does there?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. So I actually talked to Chairman Steed about that when we were putting this agenda together, and just over the last few months or so, we've just done it as part of agenda item 5 this month. I did miss it last month to even be an agenda item, but we're just planning on everyone that's here sharing whatever updates they have. Historically, that has been a standalone agenda item, is for police to share what's going on in their world, but again, probably 6 months ago or so, we just incorporated into the ex officio update. So if the commission wants to have that as a standalone, we can go back to doing it that way. I was gonna actually talk to Sergeant Smith after the meeting just for a minute to see what she'd prefer and how to work that too. But yeah, we're planning on covering it today under item 5.
Any other feedback on the agenda? I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. On to the approval of the minutes from the January 8th, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Oh, we would need, is there a motion, or do you have a specific motion?
Oh, Mr. Chair, I would like to move to approve the minutes of the January 8th Transportation Commission meeting.
Is there a second? I'll second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chair? Sorry, Mr.
Caleb,
Lewis.
yeah.
I didn't catch who seconded the motion on that one.
I heard Commissioner Ballard on the second.
And then one more note real quick, sorry. We do have Alyssa Taysom has joined us online.
All right.
Mr.
All
Chairman.
right. Sorry, we'll, I guess we operate a little bit outside the rules. I'll backtrack a little bit. Is there discussion on?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
At the bottom of page 4, I think there's a couple of typos I was hoping to get corrected. On the bottom of page 4 in the VRT update, on the last line, it talks about rolling out a new bus up information and start seeing new bus stop signs in April.
Yeah.
I think those both needs a little tweaking.
Say twerking? Oh, tweaking.
Tweaking.
To my eyes, I think you're correct. I did. So we've already had a motion in a second and a vote, I guess. Would the original motioner maybe like to make an amendment to this motion?
Yes,
Or
please.
Caleb, do you
Can
have
that be a friendly amendment?
Caleb, is that kosher enough?
I'm fine with that. Those are Scrivener errors,
Yeah.
obviously, so I can just make those
Okay.
changes. I don't know that,
It's not content, it's just
Yeah.
spelling.
Yeah. All right.
so I will definitely make those changes. If you want to revote again,
Yeah,
that's
we'll
fine too,
just dot our i's about cross our t's. So we have a motion. Does a second approve of that amendment?
Yes, please.
Commissioner Ballard, do you just second? Yes. Agree? Okay. We have motion a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Thank you for your patience with me. All right, on to old business, transportation project updates. Mr. Hood.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. First, I apologize for those typos. I should have caught both of those, so, but we'll get them corrected. This month, I'll be honest, there's not a whole lot of bold, but I am beginning on page 6 in your packet for this month's Transportation Commission project updates. Not a whole lot to call to your attention. You do have some handouts, though, from Mark Wasdall at ITD, and he would like to address the commission, put a little bit of a finer point on some outreach that ITD has going on. I really think the packet speaks for itself this month. I don't have a whole lot of things to call to your attention. We will have, as I mentioned last month, ACHD staff have been invited to your next meeting to discuss more about the downtown transportation projects and that plan that they adopted on January 10th. So I do plan on that, but again, that's pretty self-explanatory in your packet as well. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think again, Mr. Walsdall had some handouts, and on page 11 is just a very brief, high-level update on what he's going to talk about there under the I-84 eastbound auxiliary lane. But he did ask for a few minutes, and I thought this would be an appropriate time for him to, again, a little more detail.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wasdall.
I'll start on saying that I'm the project manager for this design project. Our output from it is going to be a PS&E plan specifications and estimates so that it would be biddable for construction. Our project schedule has us completing on April 1st of this year, 2024. There is, at this point, the construction project is not funded, but internally we're going through our workups towards our next budget, which is presented to our board at its June meeting each year. And I've been told that I should have some confidence, but there's no guarantee at this point for that. The status of our project is we are at about 80% design. Might be a little bit more, but we can't go to final until we have an approved environmental. And our environmental sub-consultant was purchased some months ago, and with the employee churn, that has affected our project schedule, but we're hoping to get that back online. The only scare we had on that was that the noise report early on, there was a chance that we would have to build sound walls on the other side of the highway, the interstate on the north side, but that turned out not to be necessary on this lane that we would be adding to the south side. The lane is actually exists right now as a shoulder. The shoulder was rebuilt in 2015 to meet interstate travel standards. As the interstate was originally constructed in the 60s, the shoulders were not designed to handle interstate traffic. We found that out, I think, in east of Mountain Home at some point a number of years ago. So they were rebuilt in 2015 when we were adding the additional lanes. And so our project would Right now, we have a single on-ramp lane that we would add a second on-ramp lane that would feed into the auxiliary lane. We would add another shoulder. With some retaining walls in places, we can stay within our existing right-of-way so we don't have to purchase any. And then the Eagle off-ramp would be 2 lanes. The auxiliary lane would move you off. And as part of our traffic studies, determined that eventually we're going to need a dual right-hand lane at Eagle Road to go south. And the only hangup on that is we're going to have to redesign and put a new traffic signal light in on that corner. So that wasn't expected as we were going through our project scoping before. We also do not have an approved interchange modification report, which is required by federal highways. That seems to have been a lot more work than we had originally thought it would be. We're on our 3rd review now. So couple items there that could get in the way of us finishing up our project on schedule, but otherwise we're in a good place. We have most of the work done, and it's just a few other checkpoints for us to finish up. I will stand for questions now.
Commissioners, any questions?
I'll jump in and say that we are having, per the handouts, an online open house the 13th through the 28th. It's more informative because it is an auxiliary lane project. There weren't a whole lot of choices to go through as you might have in other projects where you would have alternatives. You know, there's only one place you're going to put the auxiliary lane. So more informative, and we did have meetings on site with the larger business owners on the south adjacent to the project area, business church there, Centennial Baptist Church there. And so we've had personal touch with all the business owners there in the church.
I guess my only question is, so you're saying that for that future right-hand turn lane, there are no right-of-way concerns or anything like that?
No, we should be okay there. The concerns we had early on were the pinch point where the eastbound off-ramp in Eagle Road is. That was narrow, but we pushed out the turning radii further east, and that took care of that. And then I think a couple other areas we ended up being able to put retaining walls, design those in, which kept us within our existing right-of-way.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Soon.
My question is there plans on developing more single lane on ramps other than this corridor in the future, or is this kind of like a like an ongoing process for the next few years, or is this just one project for the ITD?
This project is currently a standalone, but I've been told that we're looking at starting a study next year, call it the Y to Garrity, to look at, do you put the whole corridor? Do you put the auxiliary lanes in? Do you try to 5-lane it? So we're going to look at the entire corridor and be able to make decisions like that going forward, I think, in our next budget year.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? All right, thank you very much. Moving on to, I believe it's the transportation prioritization subcommittee report / discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, again, Caleb Hood for the record. I will do a brief overview. You do have information on this agenda item in your packet beginning on page 12, it looks like. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of things, and maybe I'll even start in the packet. So I'll start on page 14, maybe. Just as a quick refresher, annually, ACHD reaches out to not only Meridian, but other cities and other partner agencies throughout Ada County and the public to ask them what projects they should scope and prioritize for consideration in their integrated 5-year work plan and budget process. So we kicked that off last month. It was pretty brief, but you had some information in your packet on our 2023 list of priorities. On January 22nd, the prioritization subcommittee met, and what you see in your packet this month is mostly what they talked about. I understand there may be a couple of errors, but it's the notes that I had on what they would recommend as changes and tweaks and additions and removals to last year's list of priorities. So a couple of things before I jump to the actual spreadsheets. This one I want to just highlight a little bit. It's their request, and they made some comments on duplications and recategorizing projects. We try to do that. I try to do that the best I could. Essentially, the way it breaks down is, so you got 2 lists, and by the way, everyone has hard copies. Sorry, I'm going to pause one more time. Just for the record, Commissioner Hopkins did join us at, I think it was 3:38 is when I noticed him, Mr. Chair, but he was on Zoom, and now I'm sharing my screen so you can't see him maybe, but anyways, but the prioritization committee put together 2 lists. So one of them is programmed, which means ACHD's already scoped it and they're planning on building it, or at least they understand what the size of the project entails, and they're moving towards design. It's got a year where they at least would do design right away and or construction. Years may not be identified yet. They may be in the future, but those ones are moving ahead. So the programmed set, I mean, do what you want, but they're already going, right? You can play with that list. If you want to make a statement and move a project up or down, you can, but ACHD's already planning to do something with them. The ones I would call to your attention a little bit more are the unprogrammed. So what are the ones that we want to see move into the budgeting process and the programming and the scoping process? Now within that, there are 2 types of categories. There are roadways and intersections, which kind of sounds intuitive, but it's not all roadways and not all intersections. The roadways and intersection lists actually is on arterials, impact fee eligible types of projects. So they're your larger section line roadways. There are a couple of non-section line roads that are arterials, but for the most part, it's section line roadways. Think of it more as major kind of projects. And then your community programs are basically everything else. So if it's not impact fee eligible, not in the CIP, then it would become a community program. You don't need to get caught up on that too much, but that's essentially what it breaks down to, is impact fee eligible, not impact fee eligible. So everything else, the other, is what we call capital programs, or what ACHD calls. So we tried to, some of the moving things around was to just get him in the right, is it impact fee eligible or not? So there wasn't a whole lot of that, but I did want to call that to your attention today. We're following the rules for the most part. There are a couple things as we get into this. Maybe I'll highlight where the prioritization subcommittee, and you do have 2 in the room and 1 virtual, that we're all part of that discussion. So they can correct me if I summarize anything else wrong as we go. But there were some things that they didn't agree with ACHD's recommendation. There were several where we removed a project because it was a duplication type of a thing. So I am hoping that we can get through this today. It is the headliner for this meeting, but if we need to do it first part of March, we certainly can. It really shortens the window, though, where I have to take this through the city council, and ACHD has to have this back by March 15th. So again, I'm hopeful that we can get through this today. I think the scoring committee spent a little over 2 hours on this. Does that sound right? A little over 2 hours on it when they met. So I think most of the heavy lifting's done, but I guess we'll find out here in a couple of minutes. Again, you do have hard copies in front of you. I plan on taking any notes that you may have. I will, just one more final note, I think, before I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, for anything you want to say. This is largely the same as what it was when you saw it last month, except for looks like the one I pulled up doesn't even have the right, it has the order, but it doesn't have the numbers on it. So I believe it's in the right order. Did I grab last month's packet? I'm sorry. But the only thing I messed with was the agency project description. So everything else is largely the same, and I will pull up the right example, because this is not the right thing to look at while we talk about this. So please use your hard copies or the packet that I sent and not what you see on the screen currently.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I guess you covered most of it. One thing I wanted to point out is there are some areas on the list that we see here that you'll see things that like something jumped up from, and I thought it was like 38 or something to like 2, and there's some big jumps there. That tends to be the combination of, at least my under, correct me if I'm wrong, Caleb, just for clarification for everyone. When you're seeing that, from what I can tell, the consistent trend has been is that those are 2 separate items that have been combined together. And so it's the 2023 priority ranking is the lower number, the lower ranking of the 2, and the 2024 ranking is the higher ranking that kind of absorbed the lower one, from what I understand. Caleb, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
But yeah.
I'm sorry, the far left is the current,
Yes.
I mean, that would be the FY24 ranking. There were a couple of instances, in fact, there's one where 3 projects became one on Locust Grove. And I believe my notes, I try to get, again, what the prioritization committee wanted to, but I think the highest ranking of those 3 is what they ran with on Locust Grove. And so the other 2 were sort of
That's correct.
absorbed into that one. And there was another one, I believe, Venable U-Stick maybe even was one that had, it showed up 3 times, and we only have it the 1 time now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, please, the far left and the way they read now is the current recommendation. I'll be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of flip-flopping. There were a few, certainly, that got inserted above and a few that moved down, but a lot of it is essentially in the same order. The numbering's different, but essentially in the same order. So, I will, sorry, while I have the floor again, Mr. Chair, sorry. I did have a map too, that if anyone wants to see what, just visually how that looks. The green boxes and circles represent the project numbers. So if you want to, I know in the past transportation commissions like looking for some geographic equity type of a thing, hey, do we have some that are in the top 10 in the north part of Meridian and some in the south, some in the east, some in the west type of a thing. So Brian McClure in my office was kind enough to go ahead and map those out. So the green ones are programmed and the gray ones are unprogrammed. If anyone would like, I can run a copy of that map to a hard copy, so you can have that, but I do have that available too if anyone wants to just sort of visually see how those projects equate throughout the city limits.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Commissioner Ballard.
Mr. Hood, what would it take to turn around those overheads so we can see them?
Here,
Yeah, I've never seen that done, so,
I can see it now.
okay,
Easy
great.
peasy. Thank you, Mr. Hood.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
well, I guess we can get started then. I hear whispers that there might be some corrections.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few comments.
Mr. Lewis?
Okay. So let's start with the first page on the programmed list. A new project, wait, this is roads and intersections. New project 6, old project 7. This is the Linder Road, Cherry to U-Stick. In the project description, wayfinding is misspelled. In the wayfinding signage.
Okay.
And then I have a question. There's a couple of instances where we did not combine projects as ACHD requested. And my question is, do we need to provide some kind of explanation to them why we did not feel that those should be combined?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lewis, a good question. I did talk to Christy Inselman about some of these things within the last month. Gotten some clarification based on some of the questions the chair and others had last month on that. And that's why I even pointed out to you, I said, I'm basically amending the project description column and I will talk to her about some of the changes on some of these projects. There's actually a hidden column you can't see that I didn't print out that has some of the backstory, if you will, on some of these projects. So I do plan to put a finer point on some of these, but we decided it wasn't a good idea necessarily to bog down the list we send them with some of those details.
Well, that's fine, as long as they are aware that there's a reason we didn't combine certain things and everything else we did, that's fine. Let me go down to, let's see. So still in the programmed list, under community programs, old number, is that 48? This is one that was deleted and moved to other projects. As far as I could tell, this project was moved into 2 other projects instead of just one project. It was moved into it was moved into a roadway project, and it was moved into a higher ranked community programs project. And that's the new number 11 roadway and the new number 11 community projects. And I thought in our subcommittee meeting, we had decided to combine it with the 11 community programs project, the number 11 community programs project, but it appeared twice.
Yeah.
Was that intentional?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lewis, yes, but if it's not the intent or of the prioritization subcommittee or the full body today, I can certainly change that. Let me just explain, and this is the one I mentioned before that
Yes.
is 3. So again, I do have, sorry for the technical difficulties before, but you should see on your screen now what I believe to be the recommendation from the prioritization subcommittee. So I'll call your attention to number 11, community programs, like Commissioner Lewis just called out. It was 16 last year. It's the entire mile of Locust Grove between Ustick and McMillan. 17, last year's 17, is also in that segment. And so that's now combined in the description for this one, as well as 38, I believe was the number, no, 48, Heritage Park Street. So all 3 of those, so I took the descriptions from last year's 48, this year's 17, and this year's 16, sorry, to make this. So it basically is all those things rolled into one in the project description. It also does exist as, so those are, but these are, if you read the description, just pedestrian bicycle improvements. Locust Grove needs to wholly be widened 2, right? So Locust Grove between Ustick and McMillan. So it does, I don't know what number that was, do you know? But yes, so there is some duplication now, but it really isn't a duplication. It's if you don't widen the entire road, do the full project, at least address these bike pedestrian concerns, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you don't want to read that way, that's fine, but it was sort of like a Band-Aid, you know, if you can do the Band-Aid, that's okay. It's not preferred. We would prefer you do the full roadway widening in that mile. But if you want to just pick little pieces and fill in the gaps, that works too. So again, if that wasn't the intent or how you want it to read going forward, I've got my marker here and I can take it.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure that was what was intended. 'Cause
Yeah, I think, well, looking at kind of the notes that we went over in that meeting and what's on here now, it looks like that's relatively unchanged. That the kind of Heritage Park discussion, it's in here as we kind of discussed it. And so that's kind of stable, you know, pre-meeting to post-meeting. It's just that kind of community programs one. They got combined with 17 and 48.
Okay. And then moving to the non-programmed list, new project number 14, the Ustick and Venable Lane intersection. I think in our meeting, we talked about changing the description to say install roundabout or full signal.
So if everyone's good, I can make that.
I do believe that was.
Yeah, okay. And then I have a question in the community programs section of this, the number 1 project, the East Third Carlton to Fairview. Well, this is the one that used to be in 2 phases, and I was confused whether or not we need to mention that it used to be 2 phases and now we're putting them together, or is that in the in the hidden column we can't see.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lewis, I was making the note on the
Oh,
last one. and
sorry.
I got the last part. I just didn't know what,
Sorry, community programs, the new #1 project.
ah.
The Carlton to Fairview
Mhm.
on Third Street. How this used to be a two-phased project, and I wasn't sure if we needed to mention that or if it's in the hidden text that ACHD sees.
Yeah, it's actually not in the hidden text, but we will talk about that a little bit with ACHD. There is another, on the programmed is phase 2. So,
Okay.
if you look up above, I don't remember what
Oh,
number it
right,
is, but
right,
it's in the
right.
programmed, part,
It's #2 in the programmed list.
number 2 in program. Okay, yeah. So there's phase 1, and so this is phase 2. So I don't really need to necessarily make that. No,
Oh.
sorry, I'm jumping around everywhere. So, but there is a conversation certainly about Third Street and with us moving it up that high, I think that'll catch some attention too, so. I will just call it, since we just did call that out, I mean, that was last year's 38 and it jumped to the top. So that was
Yeah.
a pretty substantive change from the scoring committee, and Broadway actually jumped quite a bit too, just
Okay.
it's on screen.
Mr. Chairman, those are the only comments I had. It's pretty clean. Good job, Caleb.
Any other feedback from the other commissioners? Commissioner Ballard?
Mr. Hood, I'm looking at, on the program list, community programs, 2024 is number 2, and it was number 2 on 2023, so that's East Third Street from Franklin Road north to Carlton. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we can't hear Commissioner Ballard.
Is that any better?
That is better. Thank you.
So I traveled that road. Does that take into account the truck traffic that goes into the lumber yard that's there? And also coming out of the concrete plant?
Yeah,
That road is reconstructed.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ballard, I'm not quite sure if you mean something other than what your words just, how I heard your words come out. Yes, it certainly does. The actual implications of during construction have not necessarily been considered, like detour routes and that type of a
Well,
thing, but
Excuse me, I interrupted.
no. So I want to make sure I'm understanding your question so I can give you the answer that,
So I think about the truck traffic that's either on Pine now, or if it comes on Broadway in front of City Hall to get back in there, or as an alternative, Third Street.
Mhm.
The question I have is the base of that road. You know, is it 6 inches, is it
Yeah.
8 inches? Is it designed to withstand at least 80,000 pounds?
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ballard, thank you for that clarification. My answer then would be no. We haven't gotten to those details in working with ACHD on what the actual cross section, both literally and material wise, would be of that road. I don't even know, quite honestly, I'm outside of my lane and I don't usually review too much of that, but that is something we can either make a note of, in the project description, saying, hey, this, frequently heavy vehicles here, consider additional compacted base and or asphalt or whatever the solution, concrete even, some of those things if it's high volume and high weight. But no, to answer your question, that was not something that I'm aware of we considered. But we are aware that there is certainly truck traffic in this vicinity and on that corridor, yes.
That's how I think.
Yeah.
Any other feedback from commissioners, questions, comments, concerns? Consternations? No?
And Mr. Chair, we don't need to belabor this. I mean, if, again, I appreciate this prioritization scoring committee meeting and doing, again, most of the heavy lifting. If the commission is ready, this is an action item. I would appreciate a motion and vote.
Yeah, before we do that, I think we would want to clarify, given that it's an action item and I mean, there have been some like slightly substantive changes. I'd say they're kind of on the border of fixing kind of an error or a change. So if someone makes a motion, just please specify if you intend to approve as amended or as originally submitted, just for clarification.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Song,
I move to adopt the 2024 Meridian prioritization request form with the stated changes, please.
Second?
have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
I
Set
Oh.
the programmed list.
That would be both lists jointly. That would be both lists jointly.
But the one that's in the packet that's called programmed.
Yeah, there is a programmed and an unprogrammed. That should both be in the packet.
Okay.
So that would be to approve both of them as discussed. So we have a motion and a second. Just to do that again, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Well, that was, you'd hope we'd get through that today, Mr. Judd, and
Let's go home.
there we go. Exciting. Well, on to the next item, end of year report. I don't know if you talked to Chairman Steed, Caleb.
Yep.
If you want to.
So, Mr. Chair, just a quick update on, and most of this information, so this is page 24 of the packet. I drafted this up for Chairman Steed's consideration. He did the proofreading. I did not show you the gory details of all of he's got a mean red pin that he gets out, and so it's a combination. I had the foundation for this, but yes, Chairman Steed has proofread this, and what you see before you is what we would propose he share with the Meridian City Council on March 12th. So if anyone wants to come to that meeting, you're certainly welcome. But your chairman is planning on being there to essentially read what you see in the memo entitled End of Year Report. So if there are any questions or clarifications, or if you want to add anything from any of those months or anything else, I can make a note, but yes, it has been vetted.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Lewis.
Just one comment, and on page 25, the second to last paragraph, where we talk about the October meeting and how the commission heard from the representative from Byrd. And this is just a comment for me, and I would defer to Chairman Steed's preference, how he wants to present this, but a thought that I had was that we should probably add that the commission recommended that the city council reopen the RFP process for the micromobility scooters. And that was the only comment I had to the end of year report.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? I did wonder if it might be prudent to include an explanation of why we made the bad decision of reelecting you the vice chair position, but again, I'll defer to Chairman Steed's judgment. Okay, I don't think we have an action item on this, right? Good.
Mr. Chair, I guess it wouldn't hurt if you wouldn't mind doing a voice vote on it anyway. Is that
Okay.
that
I tend to, I guess, for reference, I tend to agree. I think that's probably a good idea. Again, deference to our wise chair, wise and gracious chair. I do think that might be a prudent thing to include. But yeah. Is there a motion on this?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
What would the motion be to?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approved the text in the year-end memo to City Council with the one addition we discussed today.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Ballard.
can I go off topic for a minute on Mr. Steed's State of the Commission letter, if you will? In October, we were talking about Bird and their presentation. And I had noticed that Bird filed for bankruptcy in December of 2023. And that goes with a couple of other stories that the scooter companies, a couple of them have merged. And all I'm just getting out there is if we're requesting an RFP, I don't think they would be requesting an RFP if they're in Chapter 11, but just wanted to bring that to the commission's attention that Bird may not be in the running if they're in Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
So, Mr. Chair, can I just build on that a little bit since now it's been brought up twice?
Take it
Yes, radio silence from them, and without anyone else really showing any interest in Meridian, that's been tabled. Probably, I mean, spring's right around the corner, it appears, so likely not going to occur in this calendar year. So we'll see what other companies may show interest over the next 6 or 8, 10 months for calendar year 25. And if someone shows up right now and says, hey, we're interested, we can probably pick it back up, but no one is championing that right now in Meridian, so.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean that as a derogatory comment. In the background, I read news articles.
Yep.
And this industry has some growth pains to get through. So I just bring that to our attention.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think that the discussion, from my recollection around Bird, was, it seemed to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the discussion was, we made it maybe more vendor neutral in that initial recommendation, and just something that the commission was desiring to see some reopening of interest from the city side. But yeah, obviously things change, and life happens.
And I'm not trying to insert my own narrative, Mr. Chair, but the commission did make a motion recommending that council, consider an RFP. But again, with no one to really forward that on, the commission isn't going to council to say, hey, you should issue an RFP. But so I took your support of that based on Bird's presentation, not just in general, or that you wanted to carry that torch to councils.
Got it. Sweet. So we have action item on that. I guess next up is ex officio reports. Caleb, can you remind me? I don't recall if we go one by one, or if this is kind of an open forum. Jog my memory.
Mr. Chair, it's your meeting, but typically, yeah, go around the room however you want to do it. I will again just call to your attention. Let me check real quick just to see who we have online still. So yeah, Alyssa Taysom, if you want to start there, just because I said her name, if she has anything to share from VRT's perspective, that might be a good place to start, but.
Sure. Ms. Taysom, do you have anything to report out?
Yes, I do have a couple things. Thank you very much. With our new service change, I know that last month I discussed the Blade rollout, but I wanted to let you guys know we are going to be adding a handful of stops in Meridian. We're going to be doing one pair of stops at the intersection of Overland and Linder. 2 pairs of stops on Records. One pair will be at Records in Ustick. The other pair will be at Records in River Valley. And we will also be adding a stop on Pine at Rosario, which will help complete the pair there that will be served by the 45. Currently, the 30 turns doesn't go down Pine at that section. It turns onto Pine, so the paired stop is not on Pine. In addition, we did launch our Beyond Access service at the beginning of the year. It is a no-cost curb transportation for older adults and persons with disabilities. It's an opportunity to unify several smaller services into one large service, which allows those riders to go outside of their previous service areas, including between Ada and counties, which was not available before. And as of January, we had 2,835 riders.
All right. Thank you. Any commissioners have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Commissioner Ballard?
Statham, a bit off script. Is there an update on the status of the electric buses being operated?
We are still having great success with our electric buses. We have several new buses that will be going online shortly. I don't know exactly what the time frame is on that, but we are preparing to have more electric buses. We are doing a electrification project down at Main Street Station that will be coming up in the next few months, in which our buses will be able to charge down at Main Street Station. We're also looking at some charging infrastructure at the Town Square Mall, as well as our transit facilities down on Gary Lane at Saxton.
Oh, my question, are there currently any electric buses being operated?
Yes.
Okay. And this isn't a gotcha question. I read a story the other night that any numbers of municipalities that are running electric buses are finding out that they either operate for like 60 hours and break, and when they do break, it's very difficult to get parts. And I don't know enough, and maybe the buses that are being operated, the manufacturers are outside the scope of that article that I read. I was just curious if and I think you answered that they are being operated and you have plans to put new ones on?
Yes, they are currently being operated. You'll see them even running down Pine in Meridian. I see them quite frequently. They've definitely been running more than 60 hours. I can promise you that. So we haven't been encountering those difficulties that others have been encountering. I know that we have had a little difficulty getting some of our extra chargers going out at our Orchard facility. But that is not to say that the buses aren't operational. It was just the charging infrastructure that we've been having some minor difficulties with, but we are overcoming those.
Sounds like you're outside of this glitch that other municipalities may be experiencing.
Yes, it could be different providers. They bought their vehicles from different companies, etc. It's really hard to say it without reading that article itself. Our initial purchase of electric vehicles was through Proterra, but we are going forward with different companies as well.
Thank you.
Guess I'll go counterclockwise since I'm looking this direction. Mr. Wasson, is there anything from ACHD?
Mr. President, John Wasson, Ada County Highway District. We are at the 95% for our speed cushion project for this fiscal year. And that will include one additional device on Ashton east of Venable. We installed I think it was 5 devices earlier in the year. We also have Temple from Bergman to Meridian, 9 devices will be on Temple, which is a bunch. And then I thought I had another one here. I think that's it for Meridian right now. The 95% bid comes out to about $550,000 for all the devices through the county, and there's about 70 devices that are going to go in this year. all of the ones that were submitted to ACHD from Meridian and were completed, i.e. they met the speed or volume criteria and they provide us with a petition, have been included in this bid.
Commissioners, any questions?
I have one question. Mr. Wasson? I wasn't able to obtain, I think it was January 10th, was an open house by the commissioners at ACHD. One action item was plans or projections, I forget, about downtown Meridian. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Do you have any takeaway from what was discussed at that?
Commissioner Ballard, I have no knowledge of that.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Hood?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ballard, I can fill in a little bit on that. Aaron, what's his last name? Do you know? The project manager for that project. I actually haven't met him yet, but he's the ACHD staff person I mentioned, Williams. I think it's Williams, Aaron Williams. Has been invited to your next meeting in March. So you should hear some more about that project here in March.
Thank you. There's one constituent that asked me to keep an eye on that.
Any other questions from commissioners? No? On. Sergeant Smith, do you have any reports?
Yeah, there's not a lot new going on with us. It's been business as usual, lots of crashes. We are full swing into the annual Office of Highway Safety Grant, but we've been having trouble staffing that due to the critical staffing numbers in patrol right now. But we're hoping to add one more officer to traffic in May. Hopefully help us out with that.
Thank you. Any commissioners, any questions?
I have one.
Commissioner Ballard?
Sergeant, one question. This isn't facetious. When you pull someone over, do you still get to ask them the question, do you know why I pulled you over?
No, sir, we don't train that at all. So we tell people why we stop them.
Is that a matter of policy? The reason being is in California, they enacted that law that went into effect January 1, and I was just curious if.
No policy, it's just a cultural thing. It's not good practice and we don't train that way. So
Yeah.
no, you shouldn't hear any Meridian officer say that to you.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? All right, moving on. Mr. Wasdall, anything to report out on beyond what we discussed?
Mr. Chair, nothing additional. The written packet was updated last month and is up to date still.
Thank you. Any commissioners with any questions? Right. Ms. Klopfenstein.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. You have a a flyer in front of you for our Compass 101, Compass Education Series event on housing market fundamentals. You might be asking, why is a transportation agency, primarily transportation planning agency, looking at housing? Housing was something that is in federal guidance now for organizations like Compass, metropolitan planning organizations. So we recently completed a regional housing study, and this is the education piece of that housing study. So if you are interested, there is a presentation that's more geared towards the public on February 21st, and then a longer workshop type event on the 22nd. So wanted to make you all aware of that. Space is limited and it's there's not many spaces left. So if you are interested, please RSVP as soon as you can to the email listed at the bottom of that flyer. And then Compass is continuing on a range of studies. The Safety Action Plan, which I'm sure you'll hear a presentation as we start developing deliverables from that. There is a transportation funding study that's slated to be complete in August of 24, so something to keep in mind. And the High Capacity Transit Planning and Environmental Linkages Study just kicked off today. It's a 2-year study completing in December of 25. And one last item of note, in December, our Compass Board of Directors did approve a regional population forecast number of 1.3 million by 2055. So just some updates for you all.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Ballard, do you have any questions?
Well, no, I could make a comment that that projection to go to 1.3 to 2055 has probably been shortened by 30 years.
I'm not sure I'm tracking. Could you explain shortened by 30 years?
I think at one time they were talking probably like 2085, it might be at that. But
Oh,
what I'm reading is your projections have shortened considerably over the last several years.
yeah, I don't do the projections themselves. Austin Miller on the planning team staff, he does the projections, and there's a robust process to it. And if you're ever interested, he can present kind of how we got to that number. Yeah, so let's leave it there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner
Wasson.
Ballard, John Wasson, ACHD. I believe it was 2005, it might have been 2007. Idaho Power had a projection of 1 million people in the valley by 2085. So that's where you're getting the number from, Commissioner Ballard.
Then I think they adjusted that now to 2035.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2030.
No, it's phenomenal, if that's the right adjective.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Awesome. Thank you. Moving on, I think the last item is staff updates or staff communications. Mr. Hood.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Sorry, let me get there with you. Apologize. So staff communications this month is on page 27 in the packet. It's kind of after the fact now, but Ada County did share with staff, and I shared it with you, their draft list of priority projects. So that's on page 28. I don't know that it would have impacted anything we did, but you have that in your packet. Then a series of updates just on some projects, on concerns that I got from other constituents, some residents in Meridian on Locust Grove Road, asking when it'd be widened. Again, we just had our bite at that apple, I guess, to ask ACHD potentially to move up that section of Locust Grove. I did respond to Ms. Kinney. That's actually 3 miles of Locust Grove there between Fairview and Chinden. And it's all design is 2027 and 2028. So it's out there a ways, and I let her know that we'd be discussing that. The next one, Lynn Road overpass and the widening. We do have in our possession now at the city a draft MOU from ITD. They're looking to award the city the $4.3 million for that project. I think I mentioned that even last month, but we do now, as of the 23rd of January, have the MOU. We are fully intend to sign that MOU, but we are working our staffs from the city, ACHD and ITD on maybe an interagency agreement or some type of a state-local agreement or something like that on how that will work, because the city doesn't typically manage projects of that size for roadways anyways. So looking to have ACHD continue on to be the project manager for that. And for lack of a better way to explain it, because this will explain basically what the city, I think, intends to do with the money, is we'll just be a pass through. It'll come to us from ITD and we'll basically just give it to ACHD to put towards the project. But again, we got to sort of memorialize all that. So, but that's going on. We did have a joint meeting, the city council and ACHD Board of Commissioners last Monday, so a week ago. There's the agenda. I can just briefly run through it. So there's the Linda Road ITD grant. I just mentioned that staff is talking about that. So Brian McCarthy at ACHD co-presented with myself, and we gave the elected officials an update on the project and then the grant and next steps. We did continue the conversation. If memory serves you all, last June, the city sent a letter at the request of this commission to McMillan to ask ACHD and ITD both to preserve that corridor for more than what it is today, 2 or 3 lane facility for most of it through Meridian anyways. It is a 5 lane roadway coming into the Locust Grove intersection. And then it's basically 2 or 3 lanes to the county line. The conversation morphed into more than just McMillan. At the end of the day, the city of Meridian is requesting that ACHD preserve 100 feet of right-of-way on pretty much all section line arterials. So I'll be talking with Justin Lucas and some other folks on the ACHD team to figure out what the implications are with that, with the CIP, master street map, budgets, those types of things. But that's really what it kind of came down to, is the city council said, you know what, let's just keep our options open, preserve more right of way on some of these other roadways like Locust Grove, Meridian. There's sections of both of those roadways that are currently only planned to be 3 lanes ever too. And then you got, I won't, Christy Enselman was at that meeting and presented on the integrated 5-year work plan. And then finally, ACHD staff, I can't think of her name, the maintenance director, Jennifer, what's her last name? Jennifer Behringer, presented an update on that U-Stick facility in between Black Cat and 10 Mile on the north side, mid-mile, Naomi Lanes right there. Provided just a construction status update, and they would like to take some form of occupancy. It's a multi-year phased-in project, but in 2027, they'll have their decant facility and some sand or some other kind of operational stuff out there, like snow events, so they can deploy from that site. And then again, they've got construction programmed, I think, even over the next 5 years to build buildings and things. So anyways, that's the long and short of that meeting. It was a good discussion. Good to have those elected officials get together and discuss some things. See if there's anything on the backside here. Page 30 is, again, the end of year report. Your chairman will be in front of the council. And then an update on State Highway 16 is also, there's a link that I thought maybe you'd want to be interested in clicking on. Other than that, Mr. Chair, that's the staff communications for last month.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Commissioners? Awesome. Well, we have reached the end of the old business. So anything else for the good of the order? To quote one wise chairman. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
The motion a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See you in March.
Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. See you.